All right, we're live on the Hangout. We got Heather and Jay. No Rick, but Rick is on the radio show.
He's
So
not going to be on the Hangout?
I don't know. Rick, click the link. Get on the Hangout. Jeez.
Hangout?
Hangout. The Hangout. We want to hang out with you, Rick. A.
Hey, there he is.
Yay.
Hey, sweet mother.
Okay.
Look at him.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
And welcome to the show for June 4th. I'm Heather Vale, and joining me are my co-hosts, Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz. Jay is a strategic planner who helps his clients create and implement plans, goals, tactics, and benchmarks, and he also serves as the bridge in Nevada for Israeli companies who want to expand their business in the U.S. And he has a development lab which creates smartphone apps and inventions. Rick Raddatz is a serial entrepreneur and online marketer with a degree in philosophy, and that led to his development, which he calls the solution. Pentanomics are the philosophy behind the solution, which very much fuel what we talk about here on The Political Fix. I'm Heather Vale, known as the Unwrapper. I'm a freelance interviewer in all media, TV, radio, print, and online. And I'm called the Unwrapper because I peel back the layers of the onion to discover the truth. Hey guys, welcome to the show for a June lovely, balmy morning.
It is balmy.
It is, yeah.
I can feel the heat radiating in behind me here.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And I had to turn off the AC so it didn't make all this noise while we were doing this. But yeah, it's a hot day in Vegas. That's for sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Rick?
Yeah.
How's it doing in Colorado? I can't hear Rick.
Okay.
Yeah. I see him
All right.
talking.
Okay. So we'll ask how I am. I am very good.
Yeah.
I
I wanted to talk to you about, because a week ago on the show you were talking about getting out and meeting the political candidates in your town, in your city, and you and I actually did that last Wednesday night after the show.
Right.
We went to an event where we hobnobbed with some political candidates. So how did that go for you?
It went very well. It was good. I ran into a couple that I already knew, and it was good to see them again. And met some new people, and you have to obviously go beyond that sort of handshaking and everything like that, because as I suggested before, a lot of times these local elections are actually more important than the national election. It really affects your life a lot more. The issues may not be as sexy, but it's as they say, all politics is local, and that's the truth. It really is.
Yeah.
The chances of you being up and involved, if you're ever involved in a court case in front of one of these judges, is, well, actually it's highly unlikely because they'll recuse themselves if you know them, obviously. But
oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
But even if you've just met them at a networking event, they'll still not take your case?
It depends if they didn't remember me, but if I remember them and I brought it up, they would probably recuse themselves. That would be my guess. Just because just to avoid any impropriety, any if they don't remember meeting me, but then a picture surfaces, one of the wonderful pictures that Roger takes at these events, shaking hands, and it's like, okay, here, and then it's a mistrial, and then the whole thing starts again, and that's nobody's wish. Everybody wants to move the docket along, as they say. Is Rick back on?
Rick?
Oh,
yay!
wonderful.
Okay. So
we can hear you now.
We can hear you now. So Jay and I were just talking about the political event that we went to last week, which was a networking event, exactly the type that Jay suggested people go to on the show last week. And so I was just asking him how it went with the candidates. Jay, what kind of questions did you ask them, or is it just kind of a, hey, this is who I am, nice to know you kind of thing?
Yeah, and a lot of them tell you, sort of flat out. One guy handed me his card, and on the card it listed his, his platform, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I'm not a fan of. I think it involves discussion, and literally, if you show that to me, and then he asked me for money, political donation too, which I thought was a little.
Oh, was that the guy who was saying if you're gonna donate, don't make it over the certain dollar amount?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 He got all my friends.
Yeah, but it was like he didn't. There was like no discussion. He's like, here's what I stand for, and then
Yeah, and if you want to donate, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was one of these guys, sort of an ideologue who thinks that everybody thinks like them, and if you don't, you're clearly like a lunatic.
Right. Yeah. And who comes across as the lunatic then? Yeah, exactly.
Yes, precisely. Well, it's always the ideologue that comes across.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the reasonable person who's involved in critical thinking.
Yeah. So, Rick, what are your thoughts on all this?
You're not, because you're not. Because you're neither left nor right, and you're not the kind of person like. Okay, so a great example is you have people that's different though. That involves critical thinking and it involves discussion. What I'm talking about are the people who have this notion set in their mind, and if you don't agree with them, you're out of your mind. A and B sort of play this weird political game, right? So the people that are all up in arms right now about President Obama doing something, we're totally fine with George W. Bush doing it, and inversely, the people who derailed, George Bush for doing certain things are praising Obama for doing them. So it's just like if it's your guy, it's like from Animal House, they can't do that to our pledges. Only we can do that to our pledges.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there's a little nuance to it. I think it's not so much that they're wrong; it's that the transpartisan idea is right. As in right, I mean correct.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but the challenge is that it's like such a crime to be considered wrong nowadays. Like you cannot say I was wrong, because, and again, I think this sort of started actually during the George W. Bush era. Yeah, that's different. I'm not in political office, nor am I ever running for political office.
Even
But
though a
because
lot of people think you should.
that's insane.
I've heard people say that so many times, Jay. Jay
Oh
should run
dear
for
God.
office.
Oh, for God's sakes, I got enough problems. Look, so okay, so because it's, and I think, and I guess it started just because the way the internet was kind of exploding, and the way we got information. But I think it really happened during the George W. Bush era, where it was almost like, okay, he was wrong on this, so he should be impeached. And it's the same thing with President Obama. It's like for them to admit they were wrong, they feel like they're putting their head on the chopping block. So the problem, instead of actually saying, okay, I was wrong and here's why, you get like this nuanced, bogus circumlocution crapola. Instead of really getting to the answer, you have these sort of somewhat masters of BS. Right now, I believe he just stepped down, but Jay Carney is the press secretary. And they're like masters of not saying, what, we screwed up. And I think the American people would be like, that would be refreshing to hear a politician say, yeah, you know what, we messed up, we're going to fix it, and we're going to do better.
Yeah, it would be refreshing. I agree. Ah.
It's it's when they've admitted they were wrong. It's when they had no choice. Okay, so I guess I don't know, the latest example might be Anthony Weiner, right? And the crime
the
there.
evidence was clear.
the crime there was not what he did. It was okay, right? Yeah, he apparently got caught red, and that was one of those things where it's like, okay, if he was lying, he was really. I mean, he was, right, but it, it was, but as usual, it's not the crime, it's the cover up. Again, going back to the Anthony Weiner thing, okay, so he sent a couple of inappropriate pictures to a woman he wasn't married to, but the real crime was the fact that he was feigning this outrage, and it was going to spend millions of taxpayer dollars to like impanel a congressional hearing on it, just to cover his own ass. What an idiot! Yeah,
okay, that does not even make sense. I'm sorry, that does not make sense.
Okay,
Nobody does that.
No, because again, but sometimes you're dealing with such a warped ego and such a narcissist, and again, to the point where he ran for mayor of New York, did he not? Like, after all that, it's like one of those things. It boggles the mind, you know. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and right. And oddly enough, it's funny. I think the key to it is going to be convincing, building up like sort of a grassroots from the Democrat side on the cap part of it, and then the prioritize from the Republicans, because it's if it's a Democrat saying yes, we have to prioritize, the Republicans aren't going to listen. It's like they're going to. It was Nixon going to China, right? He had the credibility to go there because he was clearly not a communist sympathizer. He's the one who had the credibility to do that. Yes. The answer is sort of yes, because but you have to let the Republicans know exactly what you're doing.
See? You see?
Not running for office. I'm not running for office. Oh my God.
Okay. Well, let's continue this discussion after the break, and we're also going to have the top story after the break. And
wonderful.
So we'll be right back on the Political Fix. All right, Rick. Rick, we don't have your audio on the Hangout. You're going to have to figure out how to get your audio on the Hangout, or no one can hear you on the video. Rick? Rick? Okay. Rick, we do not have your audio on the Hangout. I'm manually switching it to you because your audio is not coming through. So all of what you're saying is not showing up on the video at all.
How about now? Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hangout testing. Hangout testing.
Yes.
Hangout testing.
Yes.
1, 2, 3,
yes.
4, 5.
Perfect. Okay. Now throw up your lower third.
I have my little.
Okay. And now put up your lower third, Rick.
Oh, my lower third.
Rick. Yeah. Lower third, and then we're good to go.
Isn't that a personal question? Okay, there we go.
But who the hell wants me to run for office?
Everybody.
Who?
A lot of people think you're already a politician.
Jesus God
I hear
Almighty.
it every week at events.
People meet you and they just assume.
Yeah.
I got enough problems.
It's like they think you're either a lawyer or a politician.
I'm neither.
And then
be,
I
though.
say, no, he's not a lawyer, and they say, isn't he running for office? No. Oh, he should. Okay, we're ready.
It's the craziest thing I've heard all week.
Welcome back to the Political Fix. I'm Heather Vale, here with my co-hosts Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz, and we were just laughing during the break because Jay can't believe that people actually want him to run for office. But this is something I hear repeatedly. People think he's a politician, or if not, that he should be a politician.
I don't know whether to be insulted or thank them.
Or flattered? Yeah. Well, yeah. I think they mean it in a good way.
No.
I know.
You've got to be flattered. It means that you are a recognized charismatic leader and stable and trustworthy and all the things that they want in a politician. So I think it's a compliment.
I do. I appreciate it. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I think it's a compliment too. Do you guys want to hear the top story today?
Yes.
Sure.
All right.
If we say no, will we not?
Well, if you say no,
we
I'm
really have a choice to see. Our votes don't matter. Our votes don't matter. Don't vote. Okay, go on.
Right.
No,
your votes don't matter.
No, because we voted prior to the show structure, which is not a living document.
Right.
It's now in PDF form, which means it's solid. You can't change that.
Yeah,
so
it's written in stone. There is a top story every week. And this one's really important. This one is very important.
Okay.
25 years ago today, on June 4th, 1989, Chinese tanks and troops cracked down on protests at Tiananmen Square in Beijing. Known as the Tiananmen Massacre or the June 4th Massacre, the infamous event saw troops with assault rifles and tanks killing hundreds or possibly even thousands of unarmed civilians, including protesters and onlookers. The civilians were trying to block the military's advance towards Tiananmen Square in the heart of Beijing, which student demonstrators had occupied for 7 weeks. China allows no public discussion of the events, and today, on the 25th anniversary, police blanketed central Beijing to block any public commemoration of one of the darkest chapters in recent Chinese history. Scores of police and paramilitary troops patrolled the vast plaza and surrounding streets in Beijing's heart, stopping vehicles and demanding identification from passers-by. Chinese censors scrubbed domestic blogs and social media websites of comments marking the crackdown. Some relatives of the crackdown's victims were allowed to pay their respects at cemeteries, but only with police escorts. Others did so at home under surveillance, expressing frustration at the restrictions placed on their remembrances. The Chinese government has largely ignored the relatives' demands for an admission of wrongdoing, interesting, and for a complete formal accounting of the crackdown and the number of casualties. Beijing's verdict is that the student-led protests aimed to topple the ruling Communist Party and plunge China into chaos. Protest leaders said they were seeking broader democracy and freedom, along with an end to corruption and favoritism within the party. Near the square in Beijing, reporters were told to leave following the daily crackdown flag-raising ceremony, and there were no signs of demonstrations or public commemorations. Dozens of dissidents and other critics have already been detained by police, held under house arrest, or sent out of the city in what they say is a more restrictive clampdown than usual, reflecting the increasingly conservative political atmosphere under the new president. On normal days, the vast plaza is closely watched by surveillance cameras and plainclothes police and officers riding Segways, but most people are allowed to enter without having their IDs checked. Today's measures, including the deployment of hundreds of security and emergency services personnel, was a dramatic tightening down. For the first time, a pro-Beijing group, the Voice of Loving Hong Kong, was planning a counter-rally at the park's entrance in support of the military crackdown, in a sign of increasing polarization in the former British colony. So, Jay, I know you've talked about this incident on several occasions, so what are your thoughts on this?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is to always recognize the tremendous courage of the young man who stood in front of the tank. I wish I knew his name, but it's really one of those indelible images. I mean, it boggles the mind. And I remember I was in college at the time, I was
also in university at the time, so yeah, this really struck home for us.
Yeah. It's that, but it also always reminds me, when everybody was, very excited about the Beijing Olympics, and yes, the IOC is a pretty much like any other world body is an anti-American, anti-Semitic bunch of lunatics, but to have the Olympics there, I think, is insulting to the rest of the world, and. Stuff like that bothers me, and the way we do business with China bothers me because they are in it for themselves. There's no what can we do to, like I said, when Chinese businesses come here, they're all about bringing business back to China, as opposed to other countries when they come here, they're all about building up their business here and not helping America, but building their business here.
Don't you think they have the Olympics there as like an indication of there can be peace?
No, because nothing's changed. Clearly, I mean, this is what happens. And it's it's one of those things where you have all these sort of people on the fringes here, both on the right and the left here. Say, the government's taking over and we're not free and everything like that. Yes, there are issues. There are things that it's not perfect, but it ain't this.
Right.
That is a bona fide police state, and I think we need to be careful when we start saying that about America, that it's a police state and all these other things. This is a real problem here, and the fact that we continue to do business with them and continue to sell them our debt is a huge problem.
So you think we should cut off all ties with China?
No, but I think I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I think the State Department is unfortunately powerless to do anything just because we don't have any leverage.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. It's just there's no there's no leverage.
Rick, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that China is it's just amazing. I mean, it's a really unique situation because they are very different than most totalitarian states. I mean, clearly, the Central Party or whatever they're called over there, they have control, and no one doubts that. And the way to get power is to work up through the ranks of that one party, and it's about their beliefs. And so they don't have the free speech, clearly, that we do in our democracy and in many democracies around the world. And yet, how are the Chinese bureaucrats and people in power, how are they using that power? In general, they're trying to add freedoms in smart ways, mainly economic freedoms. Like, they understand Hayek better than our economists here in the U.S., and Hayek is a very kind of pro-libertarian, pro-freedom kind of economist. And so the yin and yang of, to use a Chinese metaphor, I mean a Japanese metaphor.
I love yin and yang. I'm all about yin and yang.
Yeah, the yin and yang between the authoritarian state and the economic freedom is really interesting. And let me tell you from my philosophy standpoint why they're doing it. They're doing it because they recognize that democracy has a weakness. Okay, the weakness of democracy, any democracy, is that it lacks the will to make tough decisions, especially internally. Okay, when a nation attacks a democracy, the democracy will rise up and defend itself. But a democracy will overspend. They will, and they'll basically destroy themselves financially by not making tough choices. And an emerging country has to make a lot of tough choices. And so I think China's actually doing the right thing. Because no one's perfect. I don't fault a person for their worst moments or their mistakes. I think in general they are trying to add more and more freedoms over time. It's just taking longer than we would like, and because we haven't solved the democracy problem in the West, the East in terms of China is wise to not adopt full democracy yet. Although I believe the cap and prioritize structure is what America needs, and that's what it would allow China to then trust democracy.
But this isn't just about implementing democracy or not. This is about the government censoring what's going on in the country, erasing things that people are stating, which is true stuff. And you know what we were talking about earlier about politicians not admitting they're wrong. They won't admit they're wrong. They won't admit that there was any wrongdoing, and they want to stop the world from hearing anything about it. This is like being in total denial and trying to erase evidence of it. It makes no sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
It makes perfect sense.
Because?
Let me make the case a little bit different way. Okay. Let's say you wanted to take over let's say you wanted to help Somalia, okay, and you really wanted to help that country transition from the mess it is right now. It's essentially jungle law, okay. Every town has their own laws and they enforce it their own ways because the nation state has failed, and so you have some areas where like gangster type things are running amok, and other places are actually pretty good, but it's a mess. And let's say you wanted to really help the nation become mature, the best we know how to do today. You'd have to go in there with an army. You'd have to invade. You'd have to kill people. You'd have to have people on your side even being killed in order to take over the country, implement martial law, okay, complete authoritarian control. As you developed the education and the infrastructures over probably a decade or more, that would then begin to have a hint of the freedom you might want to emerge into. Okay? It would be that kind of a process. I think China's going through that process only on a really, really big scale. And so if you measure their freedoms and their decisions compared to us, it seems backwards. It seems like, look, this was 300 years ago thinking. Come on, join the modern world. But if you compare China to where they've come from, they're moving in the right direction.
Jay?
I still think, though, an admission of that, as I said before, that kid in front of the tank is an indelible image. And we don't think about it happening in a first world country, which it did happen in. And I think that them admitting that and moving on. I mean, there's no way they're ever going to. They're not going to be able to move forward until they acknowledge that and move on. It's it's the same thing. Look at Nazi Germany. Until they acknowledged we really screwed up here. Not only that, the concentration camps are still there. They will never be torn down because they're a constant reminder of what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree with you. If they were able to admit it, there would be a huge sign that they've made another leap. I'm just not faulting them for not making it, because I think it's just a way of measuring where they are. As long as they're moving in the right direction, generally, because people always take back steps. Individuals, organizations, countries. It's never a straight line. Progress is never a straight line. But the trend is positive, I think, in China and in the world generally, because I believe setbacks are going to happen.
If the trend was positive, don't you think the 25th anniversary of a massacre would be the time to come forward and say, hey, yeah, this should never have happened? Like, this was the day.
Yeah, no, I agree. This would have been a great opportunity. It would have been absolutely, and I bet you it was discussed. I bet you it was discussed in their back rooms.
And what won out was an incredibly proactive silencing of the fact that it ever happened.
Yeah.
Well, no, but again, compared to where they came from. Mao. 105 million people killed.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt. It's not. This isn't your granddaddy's communism, but still, it's we're a far cry from Thomas Paine and.
See, a country that has great poverty. A country that has great poverty. Pretty much any South American country is a good example. They really run a risk implementing democracy fully, because the groundswell of honest need can make them vote for socialist dictators almost, and then you lose the country,
right? Like
Chavez in Venezuela. And so China, with their big population and there's a lot of rich people in the cities, a lot of middle class now in the cities, and a whole lot of very, very, very poor people. If they went to democracy. And they're afraid of they're afraid of the slippery slope. Okay, so it's not this one decision that they're worried about. They're afraid of the slippery slope. If they move towards open democracy, they're afraid of a rebellion and losing control. And they've accomplished so much through managed progress. They're reasonably afraid. They're rationally afraid of the kind of irrational progress that you make under a democracy.
Okay, well, there's always a period of reformation, especially when you drastically change things. Okay, great example is the Civil War in our country. It took almost 100 years after the Civil War for the civil rights movement, for desegregation, for all of these things to take place and to really set everything right. So there is going to be that disruption after you make a big change. But that's always the way it is. Anytime, think about when you move to a different house or something, or a new job, as things are a little screwy until you settle in and everything becomes a pattern.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you comparing moving to Nazi Reconstruction?
I am taking it to a.
Yes, he is.
I'm putting it on a level that we can all understand.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
Yes, it's a metaphor. Yeah. Thank you.
Exactly. I like it. All right, we're going to come back in a few minutes after the break. We're going to have Inside Perspective with Jay Amernick. But right now, we're taking a break. We'll be right back on The Political Fix.
I'm assuming we're clear.
Are we? Yeah.
Jay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Jay.
Oh, okay. Are they for us?
Are they nuts?
Jay, if you do become a politician, you got to watch
Yeah.
those Nazi metaphors. I'm just saying.
I have the credibility.
So, did Doug say we have callers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could be people pissed off about my
Do you want to do the calls before or after Inside Perspective?
I think let's go for the calls.
Okay.
Yeah, because this will actually be, well, yeah, because if we don't get to it, political perspective this week, it'll be fine for next week.
Okay,
this
cool.
one.
Oh, so they're not callers for the show?
Oh. Yeah.
Wow. Someone's actually going to answer. Woohoo!
Okay, it's Inside Perspective.
Okay. Apparently we're doing.
Welcome back to The Political Fix. I'm Heather Vale here with my co-hosts Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz. And if you want to call in and join the discussion, ask questions, say something that you want to say, you can do that at 1-888-627-6008. That's 888-627-6008. First, we're going to go on to the new segment that we have called Inside Perspective. You've heard Jay today talking about how he is not a politician and has no plans to be a politician, but he does have an inside perspective on how politics work. Jay, take it away.
Yes, this week, beware political ads.
Okay.
And, okay, so no matter what they are, whether they're positive, whether they're negative, you really have to sort of sift through and find out what's what. One of the things we once did when I worked for APAC, which was sort of an exercise in the office I ran, is we took the record of a not so favorable member of Congress and twisted it and turned it with arrows and omissions and made him the most pro-Israel politician that ever lived. And inversely, I took Joe Lieberman's record and made him like the biggest anti-Semite since Joseph Goebbels. Sorry for
that's not cool.
So,
that's not cool.
No. We didn't do this. Wasn't for public. This was just to show people how political ads can be silly and how we can take things out of context and not to believe them was my goal. The problem is that they work, and they work because people have allowed it to work, because they take a very passive attitude when it comes to these things. If you hear something on a political ad and it's a negative ad about an opponent's candidate, it is, if it sounds outrageous, if it sounds like they're guilty of something so outrageous, chances are it's bogus. But the problem is we were so quick to believe it. And it goes back to the ideologue thing. You're so, everyone's so quick to believe, something. If you're a right-wing ideologue, you're so quick to believe anything about President Obama. And if you're a left-wing ideologue, you're so quick to believe anything about, Mitt Romney or Senator McCain or somebody like that. So it's one of the things where you just have to be very skeptical when you see these ads.
Okay, I find that some politicians play the dirty campaign, and they will create ads that take down their opponent, and other politicians refuse to play that way.
Yeah.
What do you think is the better way to?
Well, okay, so I think the better way is to be about be about the issues and everything like that. The problem is that's not sensational. It's not sexy. I can't believe I'm going to reference this, but there's a great episode of the Batman TV show from the '60s where Penguin's running for mayor. Batman has to run against him, right? And he's got Paul Revere and the Raiders playing at his campaign function. He's got Little Egypt doing a belly dance, and Batman is sitting there. Is like, I'm going to keep this campaign about the issues, and I think these posters are big enough. And of course he loses because he doesn't run a big, sexy campaign. So we see
that in media all the time in all these TV shows. I've probably seen 5 TV shows with that exact same scenario, not with the Penguin and Paul Revere and the Raiders, but with with the same concept as the main character takes the high road. They say, I'm not going to play dirty, and they end up losing. That happens all the time. This is the message we get given by society.
Right. It's given by the media, not society. It's given to society. But the truth of the matter is about negative ads is that everyone says they hate them, but the sad part is they work. That's the sad part. And what I'm suggesting is people stop paying attention to those and try to find out for themselves what the real deal is.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and the way to do.
Well, it's tradition on this show for me to totally disagree with you.
Of course.
Yes.
And this time,
God forbid.
This time, I totally agree with you. You had me up until that very last recommendation, because you're saying you're going to recommend people not listen to them, and I'm like, good luck. That's not going to change anything. I think we need a more powerful recommendation, one that people can actually take action on. And I think
that's what I said. It's just.
Well, he's saying to do your own research and figure out whether it's true or not, whether there's anything worth paying attention to.
Well,
Rick doesn't think they're going to do that either.
Well, no, that's why they work. It's because of.
No, I totally agree with Jay here that the ads are totally BS. It's not worth listening to, etc. But I just want to give a more positive recommendation, a more actionable recommendation. I think the actionable recommendation is to listen to the show and learn more about the transpartisan movement, this post-partisan movement, this political fix, the solution, whatever you want to call it, because it's going to be this understanding of the world, the cap and prioritize understanding, that's going to finally change the incentives that will change the ads.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. That's part 2. I'm saying in the meantime,
Well, because awareness is always the first step in anything.
Right, and it really screws things up actually in a primary election, because you end up with quite often the biggest lunatic. I will say it here on running against Harry Reid last time was Sue Loudon, who was a perfectly respectable candidate, but was not far enough right, and they ended up the ideologues on the right put up Sharon Angle, who I will say it was, and this is my opinion only, was quite frankly unelectable. And because of that, you have people now complaining about Harry Reid on the right, and I'm like, well, why are you complaining about him? Had you put up Sue Loudon, the chances are you would have had her as your senator as opposed to Harry Reid again. And it's just funny to me to see that complaint coming from the people that put up this horrible, horrible candidate. And that's what happens when we're going to see it again the next presidential election, because it's going to be pretty much open. You're going to have this pantheon of good candidates and like the far left and far right ideologues in there.
Okay, but how do they actually know if a candidate is good if they're getting bombarded with propaganda on both sides? From that person's campaign, you're getting all this whitewash stuff, and from the opposite side, don't pay attention, he's a criminal, he did this, he did that. How do you wade through all that and figure out what the truth is?
That I think is an issue for the individual parties to come together and say, look, let's not eat our own here. Let's not come up with things that are going to be used against us in a general election. That's one of the things that actually killed Al Gore. Is that Bradley didn't get out at all, and he stayed in and he hung in and he was vicious like a dog on a bone, and then didn't even really endorse Al Gore until the very end, I think. And by then it was it was too late, as opposed to the Republicans that literally the day after John McCain conceded had his photo taken with his arm around George W. Bush and said, "I support George W. Bush. I support George W. Bush. I support George W. Bush." And if any of you didn't hear it, I support George W. Bush. It laid it to rest, and they came together and had a much more solidified campaign because of that. So I think it's up to the parties to sort of say, let's not screw with each other too much during a primary season. That's my opinion. That's really where a lot of the real ugliness comes from.
Okay.
Yeah, the intra-party fights can be pretty rough. Like libertarians are famous for this because they no one within the libertarian side of things agrees with any of the other libertarians about what the precise right amount of government is, and so it's like, they're playing the Highlander game. Only one can live, and so that's why there's very few libertarians. They all kill each other, and then one person votes and they lose the election.
That's right. You're right.
Yeah. Well, don't libertarians typically vote Republican?
In the U.S., yes. Around the rest of the world, libertarian actually means envisioning a society where everyone is sharing so much, you don't need a lot of government, and then you're free. So there's actually a left libertarian that's popular around the world, and then a right-leaning libertarian that's popular here in the U.S.
Okay.
But that party is not associated with the Libertarian Party in the U.S., as opposed to like the Green Party or something like that, which is a worldwide political movement. Not that makes a difference.
Which party? I lost track of what you were.
The Green Party is a worldwide. The Green Party here is associated with the Green Party in Europe and.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Canada?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so in Canada, yeah. Not that that's a bad thing. I just pointed out as a matter of fact. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to have the outside perspective, which is Rick's rant. So we'll be right back on the Political Fix.
Clear.
Rick, did your phone die again or something?
Yeah, my headset ran out of power, so now I'm on my handset.
Ha!
I'm going to rant against batteries.
You got like all this equipment.
Yeah, it's all battery run.
It's the bat cave there.
Luckily, I have backup. So.
Apparently.
Now, since I did not realize it was Wednesday, I don't have a Rick's rant prepared. So what should I rant about?
Can you rant about something related, like admitting they're wrong, or I don't know.
I'll rant against ranters. Rant.
Well, ranting without a point. Just sort of.
I don't think that'll accomplish anything.
Well, that's the whole point. That's why you're ranting again. You're saying that you got to have it. There's got to be I don't know.
Okay,
How did you not know it was Wednesday?
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that. How do you not know it was Wednesday?
Because my calendar, I've had many calendars in my life, and Wednesday is always followed.
I understand if it was last week with the holiday Monday, that makes sense. There was no holiday this week.
This is the curse of passive income. It doesn't matter to me what day of the week it is. Every day is Saturday.
Okay.
Oh, God.
You don't have kids that you have to take to school or anything?
Not in the summertime.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Oh, because school ended yesterday.
You're blaming the kids?
Yeah. Yes, I'm blaming the kids. And Hitler.
All right, so tell them for Father's Day to get you a calendar.
Yeah.
I think Doug's trying to tell you we're live. Are we live, Doug?
No, he said 40 seconds.
Now 12 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Welcome back to The Political Fix. I'm Heather Vale, here with my co-hosts Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz. Rick is someone who we affectionately call the crazy philosopher around here because Rick will rant about any topic that is near and dear to his heart. And if you're a regular listener of this show, you know what his views are on politics. You know how passionate he is about getting the solution out there, the pentanomics philosophy. And now we're going to give him a chance to rant. We had the inside perspective with Jay Amernick, and we call Rick's rant the outside perspective because he is not even remotely involved in politics, but he has a lot to say on the topic. So, Rick, go ahead and rant.
Thank you. Well, I need to rant against headset batteries because now I'm on my handset here. But no, I want to rant. I want to rant against ranters. Okay, because look. Every ranter who is filled with the emotion and the passion to rant against this or that, chances are they're missing something big. Okay? And so you got to take what they're saying with a grain of salt. The exception is me. Okay? I'm just going to do a little Rush Limbaugh thing here. You know. The exception is me. I'll tell you why. Because we said this earlier in the program. We know the left is wrong because they don't admit where the right is right. We know the right is wrong because they don't admit where the left is right. The only way past this bottleneck is to take a step back and put on your transpartisan hat and try to figure out where the left is right and where the right is right and join this vision together. And I spent 7 years doing it. And it took me 2 years to get to the solution. And it took me 5 years to really understand the solution. It's hard. It's hard. So anyone else who's ranting about politics, they're wrong. Only Rick's rants are right.
All right, seriously? I think most people have the ability
I think it's Tuesday
to see both
and Wednesday,
sides.
and I'm not prepared for the show. I'm sorry.
Okay, because I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, you guys know, I'm all about yin and yang. I'm all about looking at both sides of the coin. I'm all about seeing both sides. But you're saying that nobody out there can see the other side. They're all stuck on either their left-wing stuff or they're stuck on the right-wing stuff.
You are totally ignoring the first law of ranting. Okay?
Which is...
During the rant... the rules of logic shift a little bit, and you're allowed to use words like everyone and no one, and people are supposed to understand that, yeah, there's exceptions, but we're not going to mess around and slow down the rant to deal with those details.
Okay.
Okay. So
you're allowed to rant because you're mad as hell and you're not going to take it anymore.
I acknowledge the truth in your statement, but you must also acknowledge the first law of ranting, which means that you can ignore those kinds of things.
Okay. Ranting is not logical. Got it. I will make a mental note of that for the future.
But to sort of tie it in, there's something very important that's happened is that Rick actually admitted
that he was wrong.
A mistake and wrongdoing. Yes.
Which is apparently the topic of today's show. Yeah.
Inadvertently.
Which is why I could never be a politician.
Because you too readily admit when you make a mistake?
No, it's
Yeah.
My point was that if they would admit it outright, it would be no big deal because sometimes when they have admitted wrongdoing, everybody moves on. Oddly enough, everybody forgets that when Clarence Thomas was in the hot seat to be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, they asked him if he smoked pot, and he said, "Yes, I smoked it once. It didn't do anything for me. Next question." And it was never an issue because he had other problems that became an issue. But
I think that's cool. And you know what? I'm going to take this to a metaphor. I'm not going to talk about moving or a job, but I'm going to take this to a relationship metaphor. And if your spouse will never admit when they're wrong, how long do you think that marriage is going to last? It doesn't. We all have to admit when we're wrong, apologize, and move forward. That's the only way we can move forward. Otherwise, it just builds resentment. It builds negativity.
Yeah, I actually find it cleansing to admit that I was wrong when I was wrong. Oddly enough, because because you can move on. And again, like I said, if President Clinton had said, "Yeah, I fooled around with Monica Lewinsky. I'm terribly sorry, and now let's move on."
Exactly.
It probably wouldn't have been that big a deal.
Jay, I take it back. You could not be a politician because politicians don't use words like cleansing. I've never heard of politicians say cleansing. There's a list of words you can't use, and cleansing is one of them.
I didn't say ethnic cleansing. I said cleansing.
He means emotionally cleansing, spiritually cleansing.
Yeah,
it's like a release.
I was thinking about
it's like a renewal.
But I was thinking about ethnic cleansing. My God, you're right.
I don't know if I like disinfectant.
I can't win here.
I felt so disinfected.
Which is why I'm not running.
No, but honestly, from a Canadian perspective, I think Jay is a very refreshing type of politician. Because
I'm
in
not
Canada,
a politician.
Okay, if you were, because in Canada at least they embrace all kinds of different personalities and people as politicians.
Like Ralph Ford.
Exactly. Case in point. Yes, and he's not the only one that's been kind of an oddball along the way.
I mean, he puts like Keith Richards to shame as far as like being just an out there.
He just announced.
Rock star
announced he will be back from rehab on July 1st, and he will be ready to campaign again.
Thank God. So the funny videos and sound bites will begin the second. Wonderful.
They will continue. Yes.
This is the Toronto mayor. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, yeah.
Who knows no shame, apparently.
Jay's right. He admits he's wrong, and no problem.
Yeah, he does.
But he keeps doing it again, though. That's the thing. He admits he's wrong, and next thing you know, he's sitting there in a Rastafarian wig and a Jamaican accent.
You know, he went to rehab. He's currently in rehab.
I think the admit you're wrong thing only works. I think that only works. Like, if you're on the left, you can admit you're wrong about a personal foible. And if you're on the right, you can't admit you're wrong ever.
Why?
No,
that makes no sense. That's like wives can admit they're wrong, but husbands never admit they're wrong. That makes no sense. Actually, it's usually the other way around. It's the husbands admit they're wrong, and wives don't like it. But in most, that's the stereotype. That makes no sense. It's equal. Everyone's on the same playing field.
It does seem that because what Rick's talking about, it does seem, and I don't know if it's true or not, but the Republicans tend to have less sort of personal problems, like affairs and things like drug problems.
Okay, what was
like
Weiner? Is Weiner left wing?
He's a Democrat. I don't know if I would consider him left wing. He's a Democrat.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying the Republicans have fewer personal problems. I'm saying that if a Republican admits a failure, policy-wise or personal-wise, he is going to be thrown under the bus by both parties. If a Democrat admits a personal failure, I think they can largely get around it because of the nature of left-leaning political views and the nature of right-leaning political views. It's not fair, perhaps, but I just think it's the left is about
because left-wing people tend to be more forgiving and more open-minded.
It's a different philosophy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but it's not about the political party. It's about the people that vote that way.
Yeah. It's like part of the right-leaning philosophy is this is the way the world should work, and so if you break that, you're a hypocrite. You're gone, and the party can't support you because they have to be the non-hypocrite party, and the political left attacks you because any hypocrite statement is something they can attack on. But if you're on the left, that philosophy is about letting things happen. Letting people have different views, letting at least within their space. And so if you have the affair or whatever and you admit it the right way, that's not that big of a concern politically. Your own party will keep supporting you, and then you can come back. And I think Weiner is the perfect example. You don't get infinite tries, but you can do what he did, exposing himself on his Twitter account, and then still come back and run for office and have supporters. A Republican could never do that.
Right. Okay. Well, this has been a really interesting show. I love how it came together, even though, as Rick admitted, he was not prepared. He thought it was Tuesday. What the heck? But you know what? This was actually one of the best shows so far, in my opinion. So, everyone listening, please go to politicalfixradio.com. There you will find the archives of all the Google Hangouts behind-the-scenes videos, as well as the archived audios from the radio show. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening. I'm Heather Vale, and on behalf of myself and my co-hosts, Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz, we wish you an awesome week.
Clear.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Doug.
Doug. Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
All right.
All right. So signing off the Hangout.
You're signing off the Hangout? Okay.
Do you want me to? Or do you have something else you want to say on the Hangout?
I don't know.
Thanks, Hangout guys.
Thank you, Hangout people.
All right. Signing off the Hangout. Catch you next week.